Well, we'll introduce you to an amazing organization doing fantastic work here in EBR. We'll talk about the conflict in Israel and public safety in the city of Baton Rouge. Roll it, Scott. It's the last show of October 2023, and it just seems weird to say that October is wrapping up so soon, but here we are, and we begin tonight with a conversation about public safety with Lieutenant Elgene McNeely with the Baton Rouge Police Department. Before we talk about public safety, Gino, and other things going on, I wanted to take a moment of personal privilege to wish some well wishes to Sean Wallace, who's got family all over the country, but specifically his blue and gold family here in Baton Rouge. Sean is dealing with an issue with health pancreatic cancer right now, going to MD Anderson, coach of Southern football, really, really good guy, someone that many of us know, and we're praying for you, brother, and you know a lot of us are, man. You want to say something about Sean before we start?
Yes, hey, great guy. We played football together at Southern University. He was an inspiration to a lot of us. He's a leader for our team. He's a leader for the current SU team. So we were there in full support of him yesterday at the council meeting. We have great hopes. Our spirit is high. Our prayers are there with him, and we're in full support of his recovery.
So we're all Team Sean here, man. We got your back, brother.
Most definitely.
So let's talk a little bit about where we are, and I know that I wanted to ask you about this because it's probably the top story of the last few days, and that was this incident that took place last weekend with some officers and a crash on Friday night. Is there any information about that you can give us?
Well, we're looking to get an update on that entire incident today. We had two lady officers were responding to a shots fired call. Officers were in need of assistance because they were being fired upon. And while they were en route to that scene, they were involved in the crash at Government in South Foster. Unfortunately, we had someone lose their life. One of the vehicles that was struck during that crash, they lost their life, Mr. Caleb. So we have our prayers with his family. Both officers went to the hospital. One has since been released from the hospital. The other officer that was involved had serious injuries to the lower extremity. She's had multiple surgeries, and we're praying for her full recovery.
What's the status of public safety right now in the city of Baton Rouge?
Well, you know, we're pushing hard with the initiative and the notion that we're here to serve and protect. You know, there's a feeling that from what we're hearing out in the streets and talking to citizens here in Baton Rouge, and I think it's across the country, there's a sense that they aren't safe. And we're changing that narrative by pushing the word out there that we're doing our job, and we're doing it in an effective way of putting people in jail and holding them accountable for the crimes that they're committing. We're out there at a lot of community events. Our community services division do in excess of over 300 events out in the community. Right. So we're out there with our messaging and sharing the message that we're there. We're putting forth our effort to protect and serve, and we're doing a good job. Overall, crime is down, but there has been a slight uptick in domestic violence.
Right.
And we're pushing hard with messaging with our nonprofit organizations. We're working with them and getting the message out that there are resources available to them.
The sheriff was here last week and talked about the fact that crime is down, but people still don't feel safe. And he said to me that it isn't, the reality may be one thing, but you have to address how people feel.
Right.
Even though crime is down statistically, how do you manage the fact that people just don't feel safe in the city?
Well, perception is reality. So it's us putting the information out, informing the community of the resources that are available to them, of things that are happening in Baton Rouge, the tools that law enforcement are using to push forward the fact that we are indeed safe and that overall crime is down. So it's the information and giving it them in a way to where we are going to them and sharing our word based off all the tools and all the actions that are happening here in Baton Rouge.
You know, I got a minute left. I'll be remiss if I didn't ask you. You're one of the candidates for police chief here, man. So, what's your vision for this department if you're so fortunate as to be selected by the mayor and this committee?
Well, if I'm blessed with that opportunity
Right.
to lead the Baton Rouge Police Department, we're going to push forward with a lot of initiatives that Chief Paul has already committed and implemented within our department. You know, we've already steered toward 21st century policing. In an effort to continue with that notion, we're going to push forward and expand the already initiatives that are there.
Well, we should know, and not very far off, but you know, a lot of people are happy to see your name on that list, so we appreciate that. Lieutenant Elgene McNeely, Gino, as we all know him, with the Baton Rouge Police Department. Let's talk about an initiative in the Gardere area. Can't wait to introduce you to the leader of it next. Dr. Muriel Harrison with the Gardere Initiative is here with us on the show. We've been talking about having her on for a little while, and we finally get to make that happen. The Gardere Initiative is a program in the Gardere area, obviously, that impacts families and specifically young people there. But I'll let you tell everybody. Give me the elevator pitch on the Gardere Initiative.
The Gardere Initiative was started in 2006. It was after Katrina, and we had folks that were displaced from the New Orleans area who moved into the community. There was a clash between the 225s and the 504s. And so what the city did was to establish a substation. But then the churches came together and said, let's do something to empower the people. So it's 3.39 square mile area. Right now we have over 13,000 people who are living in that area.
Talk about some of what the program does.
One of the things is that we have community policing. It just so happened that Sheriff Goodrow came into office right about the same time. So he had the idea about community policing, and so we had the privilege of having all of the officers, and it really helped us to establish a relationship with the community. And the churches came together to say, let's do some things. So we established an after-school program for 9 months, and that is from Monday to Thursday. It gives us connection with the children and with the families. We have an 8-week summer program, and that's
Well, what happens at the summer program?
The summer program is for the elementary school children. It's from 9 to 12. We have breakfast and lunch. We have academics, and then creative things like arts. We have Line for Line, who comes in, neighborhood arts from LSU. And then we have the highlight is probably 2 weeks of swim lessons at Crawfish Aquatics. Everyone wants that. This past summer we had 80 young people. But then after that we also have from 1 to 3 in the afternoon our middle and high school students. This past summer we were able to have 43 young people with us. And that's what helps to build a community, but it also helps to keep our young people involved. We believe that the idle mind is the devil's workshop, so we just try to keep them busy with something that's very productive.
You know, I think the program is fantastic, but we just spoke in the last segment with Lieutenant McNeely with BRPD and talking about crime. There is a direct correlation between initiatives like yours and a reduction in crime, because you reduce the number of young people who are out, as you say, getting into trouble because, you know, the idle mind, idle hands. And I'd like you to talk about that, because so often I don't think people understand that that investment is not just about crime, it's about keeping them in school so they become employable talent and productive citizens. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. We have an excellent relationship with our schools, so that helps to build, because, let me say this, is that we have a large Spanish-speaking community. Not one of our children parents speak English. So we are the liaisons between the home and the school. The other component that I failed to mention was BREC. You know, the Hartley Bay Park is our backyard, 14 acres, you can't beat that.
Right.
But the after school, it helps to build community in terms of the relationship with the children and then with the families. That's what you need in a community.
Yeah, what do you think the biggest accomplishment has been in the near 20-year period that the initiative has existed?
Reduction in crime. You know, we have a 70% reduction in crime.
Wait a minute, say that one more time.
70%.
7-0?
Yeah, we've had a 70% reduction in crime.
Okay.
We haven't had a homicide this year. And so,
Wait, I'm about to fall off my chair. So, for those of you who've lived here long enough, Gardere used to be one of those hot spots.
It was.
There was Mall City, and then there was Gardere.
Gardere was always in the
and
news.
you haven't had a homicide this year?
No, we haven't had a homicide
on
this
wood.
year. That's right.
I'm blown away by that. I think, and you know, it's so interesting because you really don't hear people talk about Gardere the way that they used to. That is a tremendous accomplishment by your organization. Okay, so what's the one thing left that you haven't accomplished that you hope to accomplish coming up?
Well, let me say this, is that we are looking at sustainability.
There you go.
Because now we have funding that keeps us with the units right now.
Yeah.
So we are thinking like in 3 years what's going to happen, because we think that we have to be in the community, and also we need to be tied to the Hartley-Vey Park. So that is what we are striving for, because we know that our families, the city needs Gardere.
Look, I know you have an event coming up in December.
Right.
Before that event, would you come back and talk with us about it?
I would be more than pleased.
70%. I'm going to be calling to get you to run for office. Let's talk about Operation Drug Takeback that's taking place this weekend. We'll talk to Dr. Leslie Faulkner with DEA. She'll be here with us next. The great Dr. Harrison. Wow. Thank you so much. Doc. My dear friend, Dr. Leslie Faulkner with the Drug Enforcement Administration is here with us. Now, this weekend is another drug take-back, and we'll get to that in just a moment, Doc. But I do want to start by talking about where we are in this fentanyl and overdose crisis. I was saying to Dr. Faulkner during the break that with everything going on, watching wars overseas and the political shifts that are happening, the public, reasonably so, can get distracted away from something like this. And unless you're dealing with it in your family, it's not something that's on your radar. So for people who haven't been paying attention, give them an update. Where are we in this crisis now?
Well, we are literally still in a crisis. We still have fentanyl coming in over the borders and from everywhere, because transportational wise, when you start speaking about it, there are many modalities that these drugs come in. But we're still in a crisis mode. And so we can't let our guards down. This event that's coming up for Take Back will remove some of the household drugs from the homes that oftentimes start this addiction process or whatever. But for the most part, fentanyl is still very real, it's still fatal, and we have to be on the alert for these counterfeit pills. You need to be extremely cautious where you purchase your medications, especially online, for the most part. But you shouldn't take any pill that's not prescribed for you from anyone.
You know, we talked about this when you were here before. The number of people who are trying to get high and end up dying because whatever they're buying is laced with something. And there is a local initiative here to inform the public about that. What are y'all telling the public when you are engaging with them about, in addition to what you just said about being careful and things that they could look for in relatives or even kids in their homes that could potentially be using?
Well, this is what, this is really basically my role as the community outreach specialist, is to educate and empower people about the fentanyl and other poisonings. And they're poisonings. You're poisoned when you don't know what you're taking. And some people do, and there are overdose circumstances, but there are a lot of poisonings. When these counterfeit pills are made, there are so many substances, illicit substances that are placed in them that it's hard to tell if fentanyl or xylazine or some other substance is placed in these things. And so when people take them and they die, we're confused, we're hurt, we're we're dealing with the stigma that's also associated with the process. And so we need to break down these barriers and encourage and empower people with the knowledge that we know, educate them about these drugs. They're counterfeit. They look just like the real pills, but they're actually counterfeit.
Let's talk. Let's talk about Drug Take Back. This is the second one this year. Y'all do it early part of the year in the spring, and then there's this one, and you're at. And there's the graphic for it. It's Saturday at Baton Rouge Police Department headquarters. I have been out there when y'all have done this, and it is amazing the amount of drugs people drop off to you guys. So for someone who doesn't know, talk about Take Back.
Okay, this is our 25th national prescription take back.
Okay.
So we've been doing this for over a decade now. And so we have places that not only Baton Rouge Police Department, but if you go to www.deatakeback.gov and put your zip code in, you'll find the nearest location if that one is too far away. And so we are asking that you bring all of your unwanted, expired drugs to us, and we will take them back. But if you miss this event, which takes place in April and October, you miss it, that's okay, because what you can do is go back on that site, put in there are many drugstores, police departments, and different other agencies who have take-back boxes all year round. So there's no excuse for you to keep that stuff.
Well, you see people dropping them off in all kinds of bags, and one of the things that I've had this question, people don't want to drop off prescription drugs because their names are on the bottles and all that stuff. You're burning and getting rid of that. Nothing is kept, right?
Everything is being insinuated. So we're not looking at it. We're not looking at names. Actually, we ask that we don't even look in the bags.
Right.
If you bring the drugs, we do ask if there's liquids, please tighten the container up, but we have liners and all that. We're not even worried about that. We just want you to bring what you have.
Right.
No judgment. It's anonymous. We don't know what you put in the bag, how much of it. We just want you to bring what you have to us.
Put that graphic up one more time, Scott. That's Drug Take Back taking place this weekend. She gave you the address to find a location near where you are. If you're not close to BRPD, that's okay. There are multiple places around the city where you can drop off drugs. Doc, thank you. We'll do this again next year, right? Or before, maybe?
April, I'm here.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's talk about what's happening in Israel right now. Colonel Kuvion is back with us to give us an update. We'll get into that next. So back with Colonel David Kuvion. Last week we were here. I was telling him during the commercial break, we left a little meat on the bone as it relates to the conflict in Israel right now, Colonel. And, you know, since last week, we continue to hear about the potential of more American aid going into the area. And then there has been more saber rattling from forces on the other side. Now there's more conversation about not just Hamas, but Hezbollah. And you referenced last week on our show, I think very astutely, that Iran is a major factor behind both factions. Tell me your perspective on where we are now in this conflict, and then we'll talk about the discussion of aid going there.
I think at the moment the United States is still trying to feel its way through the world view of what's happening in the area and whether they're going to go in there or support now. I don't think there's any doubt the United States will continue to support Israel with arms, armaments, and intelligence as necessary. There are two amphibious ready groups, Marine Expeditionary Units in the Mediterranean now. So these are basically two full battalions or reinforced battalions of Marines with including aircraft in the area so that they can put boots on the ground right away. And then, of course, there's the ready forces from the Army, the Army airborne forces that could get there relatively quickly. But whether the United States goes in there or not is still a political question of what's going to happen. The propaganda coming out of the Iran coalition, or the information coming out with Hamas, Hezbollah, the Islamic other Islamic groups in the area are still trying to foment that anti-Israel, anti-American worldview, and to continue to do that, as well as those organizations are trying to push the Israelis themselves into a war weariness that we don't want to fool with this anymore, we're just going to shut it down.
Well, speaking of war weariness, I mean, the same could be said about the American public right now. The last 23 years has seen us deal with conflicts in multiple places, and even when we have not been dealing with conflicts in multiple places, we have been helping to fund one side or the other. I don't know how much of an appetite the country has for either boots on the ground or even more billions going into multiple places.
I think the people in the United States still want to support the idea of individual freedom and democracy, if you will, or at least a representative government that supports individual freedom and individual freedom such that we enjoy, you know, press, religion, freedom of speech, that type of thing. But whether we want to get into a shooting war and put our children at risk is the question.
So that again segues into this next thing. We talked a little bit last week about the potential for boots on the ground. And I know the president has been asked about this several times over the last couple of weeks with no commitment to it, but I haven't seen any hard no that we are absolutely not going to do that. Based on your experience, do you believe that us doing that is a possibility? And if so, are we really ready to pay that cost?
I think it is a possibility. Whether it's probable or not, it's a different story. But I think it's definitely a possibility. You can get sucked into something that you don't want to have happen relatively easily. Is it a cost we want to pay? I don't think the American people are willing to pay that right now.
I don't agree.
However, our government has led us into wars that the American people weren't interested in either in the past. So that's still, like I said, it's always a possibility.
You spent, and I got about a minute left, you spent a considerable amount of time in Iraq after the fall of Baghdad, and you came back to the country, and actually, you're in the midst of writing a book talking about a number of things. The politics of 2023 are not the politics of 2000 and 2001 and 2002. And we now have a new reality in Washington with a new speaker from Louisiana. They're going to lean on expertise from guys like you. If you were advising leadership on what should happen next, what would you say?
Well, I would say yes, support Israel in their fight to remain an Israeli country, a country for the Jews at that point, and give them the support that they need, and to continue to broker deals. As we know, Saudi Arabia is still not supporting Hamas or the Islamic sort of thing, and there are other Arab governments that are thing. So there's still an opportunity for us to be a broker in that area for a peace.
We appreciate Colonel Kuvion sharing his tremendous expertise with us. Colonel, we'll keep watching this. Hopefully we'll get you to come back.
I think that could happen.
All right, you guys have a fantastic weekend. Sean Wallace, we're praying for you, brother. Hang in there.